As I said, once a month, I'm going to review every one of the Hunger Games movies leading up to Mockingjay Part 2. And right now, we're at that point where I can start doing that. We're a couple months away from Mockingjay Part 2, so I think now's a good time to start. And I know what you're probably thinking. Wait, Brad usually does Star Wars first before he does Rocky and any other film. Why is he doing this first? Well, that's because for the second half, I thought I'd switch it up a little bit. Because the first release is the Hunger Games, and then the next release after that is Creed, and then Star Wars. So I thought, I'll just review these like in order of which they are released. So, review Hunger Games, then Rocky movie, and then Star Wars. So without further ado, here's my review of The Hunger Games. So The Hunger Games came out in 2012. That was about almost 4 years ago. Everyone was hyped about this movie, especially when it came out at the time when movies based on young adult novels were really coming into demand. At the time, the Harry Potter franchise had ended. The Twilight franchise that I dread so much was ending at the time. I did not know what to expect from this movie because at that time I was really getting fatigued with these sappy young adult novel movies. But then some people were telling me, no, trust me, this one's a little bit more better. Now, at the time, all I really knew about this movie was that Jennifer Lawrence was in this movie. And at the time, I was a Jennifer Lawrence fan before being a Jennifer Lawrence fan was cool. I knew her when she played comedian Bill Engvall's daughter on his show, The Bill Engvall Show. And then she went on to win an Oscar for the movie Winter's Bone. And then at the time, she had just came off of playing young Mystique in X-Men First Class. And so when I saw her in this movie, I was like, that was very interesting. And of course, these movies are also based on the books, to which I have never read. So any criticisms I have towards the movie, I'm just basing off of what I've seen from the movies. Which is a plus, so that, I don't compare the book to a movie or whatever. After all, we're not judging these movies if they're faithful adaptations to the original books. We're judging it on if it's a good movie. So The Hunger Games takes place in a dystopian future, where 12 districts make up a nation. There used to be 13 districts, but the third district, it got blown up or whatever, so, And to prevent the Armageddon that happened with District 13, and to keep people in check and remind people of the horrors that was part of that era, the Capitol holds a game every year in which a boy and a girl between the age of 12 and 18 is chosen to represent their districts in a fight-to-the-death game called The Hunger Games. It's when you take 2 kids from each district, train them, put them in a wilderness-like arena, broadcast it live for the entire nation to see, and then they'll all fight until there's one lone victor. And yes, I know most people compare this movie to like Battle Royale or The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever, but I find this movie just slightly a little bit more different than those 2 movies. But throughout all this, we follow Katniss Everdeen, who is played by Jennifer Lawrence. She lives in District 12, and my God, for District 12, I'm telling you, she lives in the poor district, and I'm telling you, when you are broadcast poor, in District 12, you look like you live in the slums of the 1800s. But Katniss, she has learned to adapt to all this. She's learned to adapt to her environment, and she's very good with a bow and arrow as well. I love the way that Jennifer Lawrence portrays Katniss. She seems very reserved, she's soft-spoken, and she's a very strong female character, and she's strong for her sister Perrin. Because at the time of all this is her first time being in the raffle of being chosen to be in the Hunger Games. She gets nightmares, she's worried, and then Katniss, she's there to comfort her. And as opposed to her mother, she blacks out from time to time. And so therefore, Katniss, she has to be that rock for her sister. And that's one of the things I love about this movie, is that, it's just that good big sister or big sibling love. You gotta protect your siblings, And it really shows at the Reaping when they choose the tributes to represent District 12. Prince's name is selected out of the bowl, but then Katniss, she just comes out of nowhere. She really didn't want her to be part of the Hunger Games and get killed, and she knew that she didn't have a chance. So what does Katniss do? She volunteers as tribute. Now to me, if that is not true sister love, I don't know what is. And the male tribute that is chosen is Peeta. Now when we first meet her, he's a little reserved, and we don't know what he is. He's all quiet and stuff, but he's portrayed by Josh Hutcherson. So Katniss and Peeta, they say goodbye to their families, and we can tell that Katniss, she's really nervous, and she doesn't know if she can survive this or not. But luckily, on the train ride to the Capitol, they meet Haymitch. Haymitch, he is from District 12, and he won the Hunger Games when he was younger. But then we see Haymitch, he's played by Woody Harrelson. And Woody Harrelson, he owns this character, because honestly, I don't think Woody Harrelson was even acting. I think it was just Woody Harrelson playing Woody Harrelson. But Woody Harrelson, you can tell that he's pretty seasoned, and he's been through the Hunger Games, and he knows what to expect. But he just goes through the but he just goes through it the way he knows how to, is just being an alcoholic bum or whatever. When you first meet him, Peter, he asks, all right, so how do we win the games? Or what's the best strategy or whatever? And Haymitch is like, just embrace the probability of your imminent death. And because, like, Haymitch, he knows what's up. He knows you're pretty much going to die. It's either kill or be killed. But he also gives him the advice that the best way to survive the Hunger Games is to get people to like you, because this movie is also kind of a social commentary on how we perceive people in the media or whatever, and how you can get people to like you in reality shows or whatever. Because ultimately, the strategy of winning the games is you have to get people to like you. If you get people to like you, you'll get sponsors, and they'll send you stuff to survive during the Hunger Games, such as healing cream, knives, matches, or whatever, etc., you know? At the Reaping, we also meet Effie, who is played by Elizabeth Banks, wearing makeup and just looking like a cracked out Lady Gaga or whatever. At least that's how I perceived it the first time I saw it. I didn't even know that was Elizabeth Banks until I saw her at the MTV Movie Awards. Except an award for that role or something, I don't know. But Effie, she's this free spirit. She cares, but ultimately she doesn't care. Which is to get everyone through the Hunger Games and set them up and make them look pretty or whatever, you know? Not much of a stretch for Effie. Now, granted, they give her more to do in the next two movies, but we'll get to those later. We also meet Senna, played by Lenny Kravitz. He's really touched by what Katniss did for his sister at the Reaping, but he's ultimately there just to make her look good as well, but he also there for moral support and to uplift her, you know? In fact, one of my favorite quotes between him and Katniss is when they first meet, and Katniss is all like, most people congratulated me. And then Senna's like, well, I don't see the point. He's like, he knows the point too. He knows what it is. He's like, all right, let's just cut the bullshit. Let's do what we need to do. We know what this is. But they're also taken to the Capitol, where that's pretty much where the rich lives, and everyone is apparently dressed like a bunch of second-rate Lady Gagas and dressed all colorful and rich, or you know. There we also meet President Snow, which is the head of the Capitol. And he's played by Donald Sutherland, and I'd say, now granted, I didn't really care for him much in this movie, but I liked him more in this first two movies. But him in this movie, he's the one that ultimately runs the show, and he pretty much doesn't want the bullshit that happened with District 13 to ever happen again. And so he tries to contain it the best way he knows how to. It's not the best way, and it's a pretty effed up way, but hey, it's what he does. And he also has Seneca, who's played by Wes Bentley, and he's the game maker, and he runs the games as they're going. And he also has those little herpy beard or whatever. Personally, I like this whole segment of the movie the most, more than the actual games. I'll get into that later. But I like this whole segment because we actually see the inner workings before the games. They're in the training sessions, and they meet all the other tributes. And we see Katniss, she's doing really well. She's good with the bow and arrow. But Peter, he's unsure of himself. And, like, all he really knows how to do is just throw a sack of potatoes in. But then Katniss, she gives him some advice. But then Katniss, she helps him. She has him throw those little big balls everywhere. And then the other tributes look at it and like, pretty useful. And apparently he also knows how to camouflage his hand with bakery pastries or whatever. I don't know. But again, he's still unsure of himself because Katniss has more of a chance winning the Hunger Games than he does. And he even says it at the dinner table. And he's like, my mother told me that District 12 might actually have a winner. But it's not me. But through all that, I guess he remains optimistic because he tries to save his butt the best way he knows how to, which is get people to like him. Jumping back to Katniss real quick, one of my favorite moments in this movie is when she's presenting her chosen skill between the game maker and the other judges or whatever. And she chose to use a bow and arrow. When she first shoots, she misses, but then she shoots again, and she actually hits the target. But the game maker and the other people with them, they're not paying attention. So what does? She shoots an arrow at this apple that is being held by a pig that is being fed to the game maker. He shoots it, and she's all like, "Thank you for your consideration." She walks off, and Haymitch, she's all excited about that. It's like, I would love to see that. You know, Woody Harrelson being Woody Harrelson. Now, back to Peter real quick. You know, we also meet Caesar, who is played by Stanley Tucci. And I swear, Stanley Tucci, I don't know why, but I like Stanley Tucci playing this character. Like, why doesn't every award show just be like, hey, Stanley Tucci, can you host a show, but be Caesar? Like, I could watch a whole award show or movie about him. Just look at that smile. How can you not fall in love with that smile? But Caesar, he interviews all the tributes, and, you know, when he gets to Katniss, earlier in the film, her and Peter, they rode out in their suits, and it was with the fake CGI fire or whatever, and then she comes back on his show, twirling in the dress, and the dress catches fire with the CGI fire, and then he also interviews Peter. And Peter does what Haymitch is teaching him to do, which is get people to like them. And Caesar asks him, do you have a girl at home? And then Peter's like, yes. And sadly, she came here with me. And then this throws Katniss off guard. And then she attacks him behind the stage. He was like, "What the hell is that? You fall in love with me? This, that, and the third." And then Haymitch is like, he's doing what you should be doing, getting people to like you. I can sell the star-crossed lovers. People like that, you'll get sponsors, you'll survive the games. Now we finally get to the actual games. Now before that, I like to say, the countdown leading up to it is, I like that. Beforehand we see Senna and he's comforting Katniss. He's like, he gives her the pen, which is the pen of the Mockingjay, which she gave Prim before the weeping. It's supposed to protect her, and hopefully it protects her, because apparently when Katniss told Prim that, apparently it didn't protect her at all. Just saying. But he gives her the Mockingjay pen, and he's like, "Shh, we're not allowed to bet. But if I did, I bet on you, girl on fire." But it is a little creepy though. He kisses her on the cheek, and I'm like, Are you sure? Are you sure that's not Senna kissing on Katniss and not Lenny Kravitz kissing up on Jennifer Lawrence? Just saying. But I like the build up toward the games. It starts out with the countdown. They count down from 50, then it becomes all quiet or whatever. They're all in the arena, and then when it finally get to 1, everyone jumps to that little platform with all the weapons and stuff, and it's all quiet. But this is the part of the games that, I really wish they would have improved on. Note to any action directors out there, people appreciate framed action. Not everyone can get away with shaky cam action. Now, to be fair, I understand why they did that, because, it's still a PG-13 movie. This movie is still essentially for kids, so you don't want to show them a movie with a bunch of kids killing kids and making it all bloody and stuff. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure you could have gotten away with it, though. But at this point, we've pretty much spent the next hour and a half following Katniss trying to survive the Hunger Games. She's hiding in trees and starting fires and stuff, and she's getting chased by fire because, the game maker, he doesn't want her to get out of the dome. Now let's talk about some of the tributes. We meet Cato, and he's from District 1 or 2. He's from one of those 2 districts, but he was already trained prior to being chosen, and he has these, these survival techniques, and he's a hard RA-hole, and he doesn't like anybody or so, but he gathers some people around, like Clove, who was played by the girl from that creepy movie Orphan. And they even tag along Peeta, who they're just using him just to get to her so they can kill her, and essentially they're going to kill him next. One of the things that does happen that Haymitch said is to get people to like him, and then she'll get sponsors. But Haymitch, she does eventually get people to like Katniss, and he sends her some healing cream. But then one of my favorite scenes is when she's hiding up in the trees, and Cato and the others, they're trying to get her. They're all asleep, and Katniss, she sees this nest with a bunch of bugs, and so she cuts it with the knife, and it falls on them, and then...
Got him! Got him!
The bugs, them flies or bees, whatever they're all, they're everywhere. A couple of them bit Katniss, but she's just hallucinating, and she even grabs the bow and arrows from the girl who took them from her. After she calms down a little bit, we run into Rue. Now, this is a character that apparently brought the racists out, after it clearly illustrated that Rue is a black character. But Rue, she's this little girl that Katniss meets, and they both help each other. Katniss, she manages to blow up all the rest of the equipment that Cato and the others are holding. She gets back to Rue, she's trapped, but then someone tries to stick Katniss with a bow and arrow, but she got some, but the other guy, he got Rue. And this also made everyone cry, too. Because Rue, she's dead, and it's a little girl that cried, and I'll admit it was a little sad for me too. So, but Rue, she's from District 11. District 11 sees this. Katniss, she sends them back to this, and the Mockingjay call, the I can't whistle, I'm sorry. But anyway, she does that call, and then District 11 sees this. They do this back to her, and then they start rioting against the people from the Capitol. But then this causes a whole bunch of skerbobble with the Capitol and whatever. And so President Snow pretty much just says, "Contain this catastrophe." And so Seneca, he uplifts the rule of there being one standing victor. Instead, they can be 2 victors if they originate from the same district. And so Katniss, she goes to find Peeta, and he's weak, and he's wounded and defeated, but then she helps him and nurses him back to health. And so essentially now we're at the big finale. And what's the big finale? A bunch of CGI dogs. Long story short, Katniss, Peeta, and Cato, they're the last 3 remaining. Katniss, she doesn't want to kill, but she manages to caught him off guard because Cato, he's pretty much just choking Peeta, but then he signals her to shoot in the hand, and it sticks him. He falls to his death with the dogs, and he dies. Now, I really wish they really could have done more with the finale. That that's one of my criticisms about that. But it's probably like that in the books. Hey, like I said, I haven't read the books, so I don't know what it's like for real. But I will. But another criticism I have is like I said, the next hour and a half of this movie is just nothing but the Hunger Games, and that's one of the things I appreciate about the second movies. They cut down on it a little bit, but with the actual Hunger Games, it felt like they just shred out. It was just nothing but a bunch of nothingness and boringness. Just Katniss just riding in trees and walking around and stuff and trying to survive. I just really wish that they would have elaborated on the games a little bit and made it just a tad more interesting. But back to the finale real quick. Now we're down to Peeta and Katniss, and now Seneca he uplifts the rule of there being 2 victors and made it back to 1. And so Katniss and Peeta, they have the poisonous berries. They're about to eat them, but little do they know they're just using that to defy the Capitol so that there be no victors. But Seneca, he has no choice than just to be like, stop, ladies and gentlemen, meet your 2 new victors, and boom, that's the end of the games. Now, this causes a lot of catastrophe for them because President Snow, he is not pleased with this, so he sends Seneca in his room, lock him in there with a bowl of those poisonous berries that Peeta and Katniss had, and after that, we don't know what happens with him, but we do know that he ends up dead, though. But nothing really happens with Peeta and Katniss. You know, they get rewarded by President Snow, and she's holding her Mockingjay pen. President Snow notices this. He's like, what is this? But then they're on the train back to their District 12. Everyone was waving at them, and that's really the end of the movie. And President Snow, he watches them on the projectors, and he's really plotting next. And boom, that's the end of the movie. Now, at the time, was this movie a bit overhyped? Yes. But seeing the other 2 movies, I've grown to appreciate this movie a little bit more, especially when I watched it the other day to prep for this video. I'm like, okay, you know what? I can see how this fits a little bit more with the other 2 movies. Because clearly the end of the movie, it sets up the next movie, and I just like the way they set it up, you know, with President Snow and seeing how one act of defiance can change everything. Now, we'll get to that in the next movie, but I just love how they set it up. But like I said, seeing the other 2 movies, I appreciate the first movie a little bit more. Now, granted, I hope they fall through with this in Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. If they fall through with Mockingjay Part 2, then I'll appreciate Part 1 a little bit better. In the end, The Hunger Games is a good movie with good characters and a good concept. Is some of the action and camera work in this movie could have been done better? Hell yes. But it still makes up for what this movie has to offer for the next couple of movies. And I'd say it was a pretty good, interesting film about a game about fight to the death and what people have to go through when they're going into the game and what they need to do to survive. And the section before the games, I found that very more interesting in seeing how they pretty much prep for it. I mean, the actual games, that section could have been done better? Yes, but I still liked it, and it was fairly entertaining for what it was. And it was still a great setup for the next movie, though. Especially seeing the next movie, oh yeah, everything's getting crazy there. But I still contend that the first movie was a bit overhyped, because everyone made it out to be like the Christ of young adult novels, and really it wasn't. Or probably the book was, but as for the movie, I feel like they could have illustrated this movie just a tad more. And that credit probably goes to Gary Ross, who directed this movie, and this was his interpretation of the Hunger Games, which is why I'm glad they switched directors and gave it to a director who took the flaws of this movie and improved upon them. But I'm getting a little off the rails here. As for the first Hunger Games, I'm going to give The Hunger Games a B-, for I would buy on DVD. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and again, once a month, I'm going to review every single Hunger Games movie leading up to Mockingjay Part 2. So therefore, next month, October, I'm going to review Catching Fire, and I cannot wait to watch and tell you about how much I love that movie and why it was one of my favorite movies of 2013. And be on the lookout for my review of Rocky IV and Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope sometime this month in September. That's it for the day. If you like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Periscope, and Movie Pilot. Peace.